Good evening and welcome to the Jungle Gyms podcast. Today is Thursday, the 7th of October, and I'm your host Gavin. And tonight we're joined by Paddy and McGinty. It wasn't actually planned, but we all seem to be wearing the same type of green T-shirt. I never knew that we actually had a uniform, guys. What's going on here?
Well, it's a bit of a theme that we're doing on the podcast. Celtic green kind of fits the criteria.
Fitting. Okay. Paddy, mate, how you doing?
Aye, not so bad, mate. Just recovering a wee bit for the kind of recent football we've been seeing. Obviously, it's international break now. Taking the chance to wind down a wee bit and being tortured by Celtic, especially in the kind of heart attack area.
Aye, it's not been good for the blood pressure.
No.
And it's probably a good time to kind of talk about it. We're winding down. Scotland is on some people's minds, and we can kind of reflect back on the Celtic experience of the past fortnight. And McGinty, before we get into it, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, all good. Almost killed myself this afternoon doing some cleaning in the bathroom and the toilet, mixing chemicals. Apparently, you're not meant to do that. Created a bit of a fume in the bathroom and I had to air it out, but all is good.
But a weird science there, yeah.
High school science was way above my head. I probably should have paid more attention.
Especially to the wee labels on the back of the bottles, like, you know.
I only read them when I'm taking a shit, but
Right, guys, lots to talk about. Obviously the past fortnight with Celtic, but before we get into that, because I think that could be quite an explosive subject, we probably won't have any structure to that. So before we actually get into that, I do want to kind of be quite topical. Tomorrow, there's a meeting about VAR. So it's with the SFA, the SPFL, and the Scottish Premiership clubs. They're going to be discussing introducing VAR. Obviously, it's been implemented in other countries, like not even just England, Italy, Spain, the top kind of 5 leagues. You've got places like as far as Kosovo, Thailand, what else? Morocco, they're using VAR. And obviously they're below the kind of coefficient for Scotland, like Israel, and Europe, they're below the coefficient, and Israel have got it as well. So we don't want to be the kind of backwater of European football or of world football. So it's probably about time that the heads come together and actually discuss its implementation. I think Neil Doncaster, the chief executive, I don't know if he's still the current chief executive or the previous chief executive, but like a year or two ago, he was quite he was kind of downtrodden about it. He said that he was quite skeptical about it. That's what I mean to say. And he was saying that it was going to be maybe too expensive. It would take away from the brand of the Scottish football, where you celebrate a goal as it's scored. And he just felt it would kind of take away the excitement from the fans, and he wanted to kind of preserve that. But I think now a few things have changed. We've had that bedding in period amongst the European leagues. We've seen the referees get more accustomed to it, the fans more accustomed to it, and the viewers, the kind of the armchair fans. And another thing, probably more poignantly, is that the cost of introducing these, all the cameras in the grounds, that's reduced as well. It was quite expensive to start off with now, but it's become much more streamlined. So, McGinty, I'm going to start off with you. What's your thoughts on VAR? Do you want to see it happen in the Scottish top flight?
100% want to see it happen and 100% want to see it done properly. I think you touched on the point at the end there, Gav, with the reasons why it's not been implemented before now in Scotland is the cost of it. Doncaster and all the rest of the fucking fat cats in the head offices of Hampden can spout all they want about the brand and the grassroots feel of Scottish football celebrating a goal. We had this 10 years ago when VAR was first getting talked about in all the big leagues as well. It's nothing new. Scotland's not special in that sense. Everybody watches football for the same reason. Yet other nations managed to implement this to a reasonably successful degree. Excuse the English, who seem to be determined to make sure that this goes wrong. I've got a whole opinion on that, but here's not the place or time for that one. But for us in Scotland, it's well overdue. We know, without going down too much of the road of biasness, we know fine well our referees are shit, to say the least. So giving them help, hopefully, in the form of VAR, it should have been implemented years ago. It really should have. But the main reason really is down to finances. But we'll watch as the corridors of Hampden spin it in a certain way that makes them feel proud, as if they're doing something unique with VAR, or pretending that now's the right time. No, it's because it's cheaper and they didn't want to fork it out. Because 20 years ago they fucked us anyway.
A lovely positive note.
I'm still hurt.
That's fine, mate. Well, there's going to be a lot of training for the referees. I think the minimum it takes is 6 months to implement it. There are 3 Scottish officials right now who are actually qualified to operate VAR, which is good because we've got a little bit of a head start, but I don't think they've actually. I don't know if they've used it practically, but maybe we have done it in the European competitions when our officials are being called up for the European games. But certainly, apart from those 3, we need to train everybody else. But Paddy, like, we don't even have goal line technology in Scotland, so it's going to be a big step for us to introduce this technology. I think the minimum you need is like 6 cameras in a stadium in order for it to operate at its bare minimum capacity. So it's a big thing, but we need to do it because otherwise we'll be the Mickey Mouse League of European football, won't we? What do you think of that?
Well, I think that now we're the Mickey Mouse fucking champions of refereeing in football. Maybe no for a certain sector, but no. But listen, we definitely need to have some sort of a adequate technology there that can be utilised. To put my green tinted specs on, the referees in this country, as McGinty said, are shit. I'd like to go one wee bit further and say that some of the referees in this country are extremely biased and cheats. So,
Here, what did you think of the Ryan Porteous one? Just like, is that a wee kind of smidgen? I want to talk about that. Was that a red card? Was that a proper red card?
I don't believe it was a red card at all.
Nope.
At very, very worst, a booking because he was kind of rash. But you look at that, and the referee was so quick to send him off with a straight red. But there was also another incident in that game where Lundstrom had pretty much a very identical tackle done on on the line, not even as much as a booking, not even as much as a foul, nothing. So that there shows the inconsistencies, if you want to call it that. But I think for us, especially when we know that there's been horrendous calls and horrendous decisions and very questionable decisions by certain referees, that even if there's a decision being made by VAR, which is then backed up by somebody sitting in a computer room, and you still look at it and you still think, wow, that's a shocking decision. It at least lets you have scope to say, look, there's something not quite right here.
Aye, exactly. Right now we're going on the basis of honest mistakes and human error and all the rest of it. If you're now saying that we can have somebody in a room watching it 5 times, taking 2.5 minutes sometimes in the EPL and in the La Liga and other countries in Europe, it doesn't take that long really, but sometimes it can. If they can fuck up a decision and still get it wrong after seeing it that time, then we've got scope to turn around and say, look, this isn't honest mistakes anymore. You're up to something here. Now, trying to pull it back from the bias side, which I personally do agree there's biasness within our referee setup. But let's go back. We'll go back about 10 years ago. So
I thought you were going to bring the George Cadet goal back in the day. I thought you were going to go back that far.
I'm going to go back to the Daniel Mestorovic, Willie Collum penalty incident where Willie Collum's actually got his back turned. He's turning around to try. The ball's played over from one side of the park into the middle. For whatever reason, Willie Collum's turned away from the play to try and get himself into vision for the cross ball, which is kind of okay. You're an idiot. You've turned the wrong direction, but that happens. But by the time he's turned around, the Rangers player's on the deck, and Mestorovic standing over him like, what the fuck has just happened here? And Willie Collum pulls for a penalty. For me, that's exactly what VAR should come into. VAR will come in and say, look, that's not a penalty. You've not seen it. But we have. Here you go. It's not a penalty. It's overruled. Things like that won't happen. if it at least cuts that crap out, then brilliant. As far as the Ryan Porteous decision last weekend, it's baffling that the referee was so quick to pull the red card for that one when you see it from the angle behind the referee, which is I think the first one everybody saw as we watched it live. Ryan Porteous takes the ball clean in that angle, so I don't know what the ref's seen to think that he can send him off straight away without even talking to the linesman or anything. And when you see it from other angles, you see that he doesn't actually touch the player. And yes, you could argue studs up a little bit and he's went over the ball. He's obviously, I mean, it's fast action. He's mistimed or mispositioned where his foot is, but he still took the ball. His foot's bounced over the top of it, slid over the top of the ball, and he's came close to Aribo, but he's not touched him. It's not a red card. Again, VAR should clear that. However, apparently it's just been the appeal has just been disallowed anyway, so fuck knows what they're going to do.
Well, see what you say there, McGinty. You don't know what the referee's seen. I think he's looked at the scoreboard.
100%. 100%.
Well, the refereeing fraternity, I'm going to add this, the fraternity of the refereeing in Scotland have kind of backed the referee for that decision, which again, that'll just kind of fan the flames a wee bit more for people who do feel it was a blatant red card. But I guess the benefits of VAR will be like, you know, whenever Celtic beat X team, Motherwell, Dundee United, whoever, 3-0, 4-0. And then after the game, the opposition manager is saying, well, the game changed whenever Celtic were awarded that penalty in the first half. But that's what happens at Parkhead. The referee is influenced by the home crowds, and that happens same at Ibrox. You know, we've heard those kind of interviews before, comments from opposition managers, but maybe now they'll shut up because we'll have the video evidence, and they won't be kind of quelling under the atmosphere of a Celtic or Rangers home atmosphere. Maybe that's one, and perhaps it might kind of take away the prejudice. Sometimes Rangers fans feel that they are not treated fairly, and I know that sometimes we do feel that as well. So maybe it might take away that aspect. You're never going to get it 100%, but it can be analysed far more accurately and forensically. So. But again, the thing about whenever you do score a goal and you have to, you're like, do I celebrate? Do I not celebrate? That's going to be a weird for the players and weird for the fans in the stadium. Like,
listen, of course, that is the kind of biggest negative issue, especially for spectators, is that, like, you know, if you score a goal, is it going to be flagged for a VAR decision? Or it's the same, I know. Like when are you going to think that the referee's going to fucking stick his flag up? Do you know what I mean? It's just another kind of evolution of football, but
totally.
It can definitely be used for good in some circumstances. It's definitely going to work against you. Definitely in circumstances, because we have benefited from kind of slightly dodgy decisions as well, but nothing too sinister, as I like to call it. And you said as well, Gav, people talking about it. There's always been a kind of phrase that I hear kind of season in, season out, and it's that decisions even themselves out through the season. You know what I mean? So to me, that's like a bit of a get out clause by a right stinking decision or a right sinister decision. It's like, well, listen, you doesn't matter if he dived there or fucking never fouled, or you know what I mean. You'll get a goal somewhere along down the line.
Aye. For one person who I'm probably not wise to quote this person, but he's actually said it a couple of times. But Graham Souness on Sky Sports for that comment there. What you said, that it evens itself out, bad decisions over the course of a season. He disagrees with that. He said that it evens itself out over the course of your footballing career, but not in one isolated season. That was something interesting that I picked up from Graham Souness. But again, pros and cons, as you said. You know, you don't want to be left in the dark ages, but so you want to kind of progress with the rest of your peers in European football and world football. But at the same time, it does kind of detract from that real-time enjoyment. But what I don't want is for like foreign football fans to stick on an SPL game and say, we're going to watch a bit of retro football. This is how they used to play football back in the day when you never had like VAR and stuff like that. So we need to move along with the times. But putting a full stop to that point, let's move on to Celtic in general. So, In our absence, the football games that we've not yet covered, we played Dundee United at home. We drew 1 each. That was a frustrating game that I witnessed. Moving on from that, we had the hardest team probably that we'll play this season. Leverkusen at Parkhead. The atmosphere was fantastic, by the way. The disco lights. That was my first time witnessing that. That was a spectacle. But the game itself, the scoreline was bad. It could have been worse. And then, of course, we played Aberdeen there. We went up to Pittodrie. We faced off against Scott Brown, which was surreal enough. But even adding to that surrealism was the fact that we hadn't won an away game since, when was it, Paddy? February this year?
Valentine's Day, I think, February 14th.
Madness.
I know.
Madness. Well, we came away, as I said, we went hell for leather. We won 2-1. Jota, I think, scored in the 84th minute. So, a lot to get through. The results, the performances, the tension in the interviews that we're seeing now, and Postecoglou and how he's been defiant. And I want to kind of mention before I even forget, but you remember at the end of the game against Aberdeen when he was kind of approaching the Celtic away fans, he was kind of pumping his chest. It was like he was having like a kind of a silent conversation with the fans to say, stick by me because I know what the plan is, just stick by me. That's kind of what I was reading into it. Maybe you guys thought,
It was
yeah,
it was almost like his Ronnie Dyler moment, wasn't he? When Ronnie Dyler used to go over the crowd and fucking beat his chest and give it the yes, yes, yes.
Oh, this was far more subdued though. It was like kind of.
Listen, he looked like a big angry bear that was shaking an invisible jacket. That's what he looked like. But he definitely looked as if he was kind of throttling a ghost and just releasing some tension. But I would imagine you would do that after fucking being kind of saved by a kind of a late goal.
Aye. Well, McGinty, let's start off with yourself. The kind of the run of form that Celtic have been on. Dundee United 1 each, Leverkusen 4-0, and we managed to get a win 2-1 against Aberdeen, where we all knew as fans that it was going to be a tough one. How do you sum up your feelings over that course of period? It was difficult being a Celtic fan, and any particular memorable moments during those 3 games that kind of stick out for you?
No, overly, it's all a bit of a fucking whirlwind at times. Deflated and frustrated is kind of my emotions and feeling on the whole for what we're seeing in the last kind of month or two with Celtic. I want to say before we go any further again, Ange Postecoglou, I like the guy. I love his enthusiasm. I like his outlook on football. I love the style that he's trying to implement, and when it works, it really does look great. But it's not working just now, and he does need time. And when I say perhaps Celtic's not the right club for him, I don't mean that we're too big for him. I just mean that perhaps we right now aren't the right team for him because of our transitions that we're dealing with and the crap that we're dealing with at a higher level. But for me, the overall where we're at just now in the league with the football stuff just now, it's frustrating as fuck.
Do you think that the changes that he's trying to implement is too much too soon? It's too much of a radical style for Celtic in our vulnerable period right now?
Somewhat, yeah. He needs to be more savvy and more pragmatic with what he's got and adapt his style. He said this apparently before in a few different situations and clubs that he's been at, that his style evolves a little by little every time he moves to a new club and every time he kind of understands his own kind of flaws maybe within his system. He is able apparently to adapt his style, but we're not seeing a big enough adaptation right now to it where he needs to really drop a certain aspect of the style, which I know Paddy's going to have a field day with this conversation with Topic Point, but he needs to wrap it with the inverted fullbacks. It doesn't work. Tony Ralston is not a Celtic quality fullback to begin with, let alone asking him to play also as a central midfielder. And when we look to the left back situation, I think Greg Taylor's slightly better than Anthony Ralston. Both of them play with so much heart and so much passion that you have to credit them when they have a good performance, put in a shift. They get all the credit they deserve. They do try their fucking heart out, but they're just not Celtic class. And again, we're asking him to try and play central midfielder. These two guys are just not at the races when we really need them to be. And the centre backs are, regardless of what two we're playing, they're too disjointed and they're too new. There's no gel between the centre backs, let alone the back four. For me, he needs to wrap it with the inverted wing backs, full backs, play it more sensibly in the back line and the slight midfield in front, where I said to you guys before we went live, in the last season or two, we seem to went from having too many defensive-minded players, and that Scott Brown would sit almost as a third centre-back at times, and you end up with 6 or 7 defensive players, including the goalkeeper, to almost having 6 or so attacking players now, where we now play, instead of playing Scott Brown along with a Near Beaton or a Callum McGregor's trying to do 2 roles, we're now playing Tom Roderick and David Turnbull as 2 number 10s, supporting the 3 guys in front. So we've almost lost the midfield and allowing Callum McGregor to run around and do all the work, which we definitely missed because he is energetic and he is able to do it. But we've lost that midfield, and his support now is Tony Ralston and Greg Taylor, or whoever's filling in now that he's out with his shoulder injury, and they're just not good enough. So I feel like we need to drop one of those 2 number 10s, bring it back to a more flat 2 midfield, get the back 4 to be more structured, and then allow the front 4 to do their magic and allow just a natural build-up into that front line, because we just don't have the players to ask the fullbacks to become de facto midfielders in support of that glorified attacking formation, which we all want to see, because when it works, it's a fucking joy. And I can see what Ange Postecoglou is trying to do, and as frustrated as I was the last time we were on, and he was getting close, and he still is quite close to a limit here. The Aberdeen win just gets him over the line a little bit more. He does need more time, but I just don't see how much more time we can really afford him if we still keep dropping needless points because of something so obvious that we should be changing.
Well, McGinty, sorry, Paddy, before forgive me. McGinty, very diplomatically put, I was expecting a lot more expletives from yourself. A lot of good points. Can I paraphrase you, and forgive me if I'm butchering your words? At the start of it, did you kind of say along the lines of right man, right club, wrong time? Is that kind of
yeah. We all know the bigger issues we have at the club, behind the scenes, backroom issues, boardroom issues, and backroom staff issues. We've got a lack of it, to say the least. If Ange Postecoglou had the modern infrastructure of a football club that we see at Ajax, at Leipzig, at Sevilla, at Real Betis, at Leverkusen, for examples, even Brentford, I think, was the club that Don Mackay mentioned as being modern football clubs to look at, along with Sevilla, I think was mentioned by him. If we had these structures in place, that this backroom staff, a dedicated medical team of physios and fitness and reconditioning training coaches, a dedicated analysis team, which isn't just Gavin Strachan with a laptop, is actually, a head analysis with 3 guys underneath them who are analysing not only our performances in our game, but our opponents, upcoming ones, and games that we played, to learn from them when we come into games next time, to adapt, to give information back to the coach. And excuse me, guys, if we had this kind of stuff, and then along with more coaches, better coaches, more
structure.
Yeah, all of it, more of it, just more, and specialised, it would be so much better for a manager like Ange Postecoglou to come in and lay out his ideas and his structure. And yes, we can credit Tony Ralston especially, and Ryan Christie got on board with it as well, with his new style and the the style and type of football that he wants to play. They're getting on board with it in times, but they're just not good enough when it comes to guys like Tony Ralston.
I'm going to pass over to Paddy because I know that he's eager to get in this.
Yeah, I was just going to counter what McGinty was saying there about the inverted fullbacks with a wee tiny bit of positivity before what I'm preempting is going to be a bit of a tirade by myself. You saw how it clicked for the winning goal at Pittodrie. Montgomery ended up in basically the number 10 position in the centre of the pitch. He plays a quick 1-2 with somebody inside. He
Roger.
then makes, it might have been Rogic, aye. Do you know what? It was Rogic, sorry. He then moves himself out to the left. There's a quick interpass with somebody else. Then he gets forward, gets the ball in for Jota, as we know, happened to be the winner. That's where it looks to be fruitful, this inverted fullback stuff. That also coincides with Postecoglou bringing on Rogic, which was something else he's been kind of questioned on as his in-game substitutions and management. But again, where you can see the positivities, you can vastly see the shortcomings with it, because every single time that we get up the park and we lose the possession, i.e. Tony Ralston, just for talking's sake, if Tony Ralston's at centre mid, or if he's like basically at right wing, as soon as we lose that ball, teams are clicking onto us, and all that they need to do is play one killer pass down the lines, and they're in. And we've seen that time and time again this season. The one against Livingston was the biggest recent kind of blunder on the Leverkusen game. They had one chance, they had one pass, and it went out to right back because Ralston was, I don't even know where Ralston was at that point. He certainly wasn't at right back. They had so much space in the left wing. It was literally Starfelt and Vickers, I think, at the back, themselves, two men. They put a cross on. Sorry, it was Welsh. My apologies, it was Welsh. And again, a goal leading from a major open space the opposition had. You go to the Leverkusen game, nobody's expecting us to go and beat Leverkusen. We're expecting to go out, put in a good performance and a good bit of heart and grit. But they absolutely tore us to shreds. As much as we put in a decent shift up front, do you know what I mean? Kyogo could have scored 2 goals, possibly 3. Jota, again, the wee magician, was performing very well. I think
Jota's been great, man. Without Jota right now, we'd be really struggling.
Mate, Jota and Kyogo have been the biggest factors for us in the last few games. Most recently, Pittodrie, the 2 goal scorers. But there's only so much that you can expect your forwards to do when, as soon as you lose possession, teams are, as I say, the opposition teams are clicking onto you. And all they need to do is play that one killer pass. I think the Leverkusen manager said it in a comment afterwards, and he says, what was your kind of thoughts coming into the Celtic game? How were you prepared? And he basically just says that we were just going to hit them on the break every single time, just because we knew that they were frail, and we knew that we were going to get into space, and that's exactly what they did. They dragged us wide every single opportunity.
We spoke about that before, Paddy. I think it might be the dodgy podcast that never actually made it to the live.
Tell me more about the dodgy podcast.
The one we recorded, and I accidentally mucked up the sound on Paddy's microphone, and basically I talked to myself for 25 minutes.
All right. I thought it was a different type of dodgy. Sorry.
No. It quickly got deleted. But
it was the uncensored version, no?
No. But we quickly analysed the likes of Real Betis and the attack that they can afford against us, and Canales, Fecker and Iglesias. They scored 4 against us. We all saw how that happened, and even more so, Leverkusen scored 4 against us with no reply. But we acknowledged that they were going to play a very similar game, a very similar formation of 4-3-3 against us, with a high intensity, high press, and a highly obvious way of playing against us, which was going to be down the wings as well. Because we acknowledged straight away they've got 2 wide men who are extremely dangerous, going with the striker up front, which Schick didn't even play. It was that youngster, was it not, that played? And it's easy for them because they know what to do. Our fullbacks are cut into midfielders. Everybody knows that they're not the greatest at fullback, let alone midfield. Again, they played the heart out and all the rest of it. I credit to them what it's due. But once they do that, we're left with 2 centre-backs. And once you've only got 2 centre-backs against teams who are literally playing 3 attackers, and you've got 2 centre-backs who are getting dragged to the left side, one goes all the way over, and you're left with just, for talk's sake, Starfelt, left basically marking 2 guys with 2/3 of the pitch, width of the pitch. It's easy to split that open, and they know it. And Leverkusen knew that before they came into the game. We knew that it was going to be their game plan before we came into the game. They can do it. The likes of Hearts and Dundee and all the rest of it, they know how to do it as well. They're not that great at doing it, so maybe they're not beating us 4-0, but they're holding us to games and they're able to get a counter against us.
And see to add into that, mate, it's when you've got those inverted fullbacks up the pitch, you look at our backline as well. Our backline is playing very, very high up the pitch, So your 2 guys are basically, at times, they're sitting in the defensive midfielder position. Do you know what I mean? So you can maybe understand like a team like Leverkusen coming and scudding you 4-0. Betis losing 4 goals against them, even though we scored 3, which was which was a yo-yo game.
I think we shot the bed against Betis. We're 2-0 up. There was no excuse for that. And I love Postecoglou, but I want to see more of him for the inter-game management.
See the goals that we're losing. See the 4 goals that we conceded against Betis, the 4 goals that we conceded against Leverkusen, the goals that we conceded against Livingston, Dundee, fucking. It's you're losing these same types of goals to teams at both ends of the spectrum.
I know.
It's not just top teams. It's teams like Livingston who haven't even won a game in the season until they played us.
Well, I want to kind of build on that with a question to you about Postecoglou, and it kind of ties in with what McGinty was saying earlier on about the inverted fullbacks, because it's kind of the biggest bugbear right now for Celtic fans. When I was at the Leverkusen game, I almost got into a shouting match with like a Celtic supporter behind me, and it was when we lost either the first goal or the second goal to Leverkusen, and it was Ralston who had came into the middle of the pitch, into the middle of midfield. He lost the ball at that point, and then boom, they played like a surgical pass down our right back flank, and a goal transpired from that. It was painfully obvious that Ralston was out of position, and I shouted out, just kind of like, I was just pissed off, and I was saying it's no his fault. I gave the ball away. That part's his fault, but being out of position is not his fault. That's what he's been told to do. I kind of put it more eloquently, like that when I shouted in anguish. But some Egypt behind me shouting, "Well, he's a fucking right back. He should be playing the right back." But that's the kind of point that I want to come on to. McGinty was saying, "Right man, right club, wrong time." I don't think he's going to waver with his principles. These are his principles. So, Paddy, we're seeing the obvious flaws. We're losing goals like this repeatedly, and even if we're not, people are targeting us anyway like that. So, what's your thoughts on Postecoglou persevering with that? How long do you give him? What's your thoughts, mate?
That's a tough question. You look at it right, and for all accounts, what you're told is that Postecoglou comes into a club. It takes him possibly 6 months to rebuild his team the way that he wants them to play. Right? Postecoglou's never managed at this level. No disrespect him, but he's come into a club at a time where I don't think he can be afforded 6-month grace period. Do you know what I mean? This is a massive season for us. Last season was huge in terms of the Celtic support first and foremost wanting to win the league. The 10 was a big thing for us, but that was more of a vanity thing, right? But obviously, you want to win your league first and foremost. We capitulated something terrible last season, and the defence was atrocious. A game that you said teams were targeting us. They did that to us last season, but they did it in a certain way that they were just launching balls in because they knew fine well that our defence was atrocious. They knew fine well that your centre back pairings, that you were going to get something at them. It's the same this season under Postecoglou. They know fine well that Ralston or Montgomery or whoever's in that position is going to be asked to fucking run into centre mid, add into a 6-man midfield, run forward, do whatever, be anywhere but their position. on the attack, and it only takes one quick counter to get behind us. And when they do that, our two centre-backs are still poor. I know Vickers is just in the door and he's shown signs of being a decent centre-back, but the guy beside him, Starfelt, is, I think he'd be as well with a starfish in centre-back. I think the guy's atrocious. And the setup is just leaving so many defensive frailties. You know what I mean? We got two centre backs playing so high up, your two full backs playing everywhere but full back. It's just it's going to cost us so many goals. And if you're saying that Postecoglou is going to stick with that, then I don't know. I really don't know. I can't. I don't want to see it happening, but I can foreshadow like a disaster. You know what I mean? You'll possibly see games where it's lovely, expansive football, great attacking, but you're going to lose their goals.
I think you were alluding to this season is too big to allow Rangers to win another league.
Mate, sorry, that's exactly what I was meaning.
Obviously, last season was the big one, but now we're in the current season, and again, yeah, we can't. I think we've kind of, if you make your bed, you have to lie in it to an extent, and I think we've already kind of committed too much. We've got in a manager. We knew what his principles were. We probably never realised how radical, how extreme it could be. But we've bought in certain types of players like Kyogo, Jota, Abada, these kind of lightweight, fast-moving types of players, and we're playing a 4-3-3 formation. I think we've kind of made our bed already, and if we got like Mick McCarthy in the summer, as a manager, and we sign players of like the kind of the tall types, physical players, British players, that might have sufficed for one season. But what do you think about the line of thinking that it might not happen this season to win the league? That's what I feel anyway. I know that you guys disagreed, but it might give us a foundation to win the next 3-4 if Postecoglou sticks with us.
But again, that's a might. You know what I mean? That's you hoping. As you say, you're putting all your eggs in one basket and hoping that it comes. But this season is monumentous in terms of whoever wins the league is getting virtually automatic qualification into the Champions League. And with that comes the riches of, you're talking about £40 million. That's something that's going to transform a club. You know what I mean? And if we're not getting that, then obviously it's looking like it's going to be another team that gets it. And if that happens, they've already won the league last season. They've already kind of solidified a team. You know what I mean? If they end up with the riches of £40 million Champions League, then it's going to be one hell of a task for us to go and win the league next season. Do you know what I mean? Every year we're just falling back and falling back and falling back.
McGinney, where's your views on that?
I somewhat disagree with the analysis of the other club and what potentially they could get out of this, especially after the last couple of days when we see their financial reports, do we call them, legally speaking. They're in the shit. Excuse me again. If they get the Champions League money, which I think is playing on a lot of Celtic fans' minds, mine included, that you don't want them to get that money because it will allow them to limp on a little further. However, we keep saying £40 million. It's not that much now. Since the restructure of the broadcast rights and stuff, not the rights, the broadcast financial spread of wealth that's being afforded by UEFA, we don't get that much in Scotland because of how much English clubs get. It's not split the same way it was 6-7 years ago. It's more close to 30 million, but you have to remember that the clubs like ourselves and Rangers just now, we're getting about 12 to 15 million out of Europa. The difference to getting in the Champions League is probably only going to be another 15 million for them, should the worst case scenario happen here. And in that sense, the predicament that they're in is not going to save their arse. So I can understand why a lot of Celtic fans are concerned about that, because it could give them the lifeline. but I don't feel like it's going to be the lifeline they think it is.
So if it is only 30 million,
Give or
what's
take.
what's the onus? Should we be more kind of finger on the trigger with our manager, or should we let the style of play in Postecoglou's reign ride out for the
So
foreseeable future? What are your thoughts on it? How trigger happy should we be with the manager if it's visibly not working right now?
this brings me back to my right guy, right club, wrong time sort of thing. We're talking about a guy who openly admits, and his followers from across the Far East and Australia admit as well, that it can take 6 months to even some of them saying 18 months before you see the wow factor on a consistent basis sort of thing. And yeah, that sounds great if it can happen. And if you're a club like say your club like I don't know, a Real Betis, a Leverkusen sort of thing. Say you're Leverkusen and you're trying to eventually win yourself a Bundesliga title. You're not expected to win that at all, really, the Bundesliga title if you're Bayer Leverkusen. But if you can put a manager in who says, give me 3 years and I'll win you the Bundesliga title, you're going to go all in on that guy. Whereas at
But
Celtic,
that's maybe not a fair comparison because we
That's
are
not the
Celtic.
same level.
no, that's
That's-
what I mean though. Whereas at Celtic, we don't have 3 years because we demand that result. Because if it's not us winning it, it's them, and we don't want them to win it. So
Normally, if we don't do it this year, it has to be next year that we win it. That's normally the
exactly.
kind of.
And unfortunately for Ange, we didn't win it the last year, so it has to be this year. So yeah, we could be very demanding as a fan base, but can we afford to allow this to be in 2 seasons in a row and a guy still stays in job? It's very hypothetical going forward.
What's Plan B?
And
What's Plan B? If we get a good, we've got a good candidate right now on paper. Like I remember the kind of the philosophy, the ilk of people that you wanted to hear. And I'm not kind of attacking you, but back in the summer, that was a kind of the ilk of people that you wanted. We've got it. It's maybe too radical. We're expecting too much too soon. It's not
it's
going well right now. But if we get rid of him right now, and I'm not advocating for that, I'm just playing devil's advocate. What is the plan B? Do we get the same type of guy, or do we go for something radically different, like a Mick McCarthy, for example?
Plan B should be Plan B should be Plan A, and the problem isn't Ange Postecoglou's radical style. The problem is that we as a club do not give him the tools and the resources that he needs. Go back to the arguments. It's not an argument. It's not an argument. All it's a fucking fact and a point. Go back to the point that he doesn't have the structure behind the scenes to help support him. You're asking, as you say, Gavin, we've got a radical difference and approach to fundamental football here, where the inverted fullbacks, the attacking philosophy is different. It's not unusual in world football, but it's different for us and it's different for the Scottish game. And when it eventually will work, it will be brilliant, I'm sure. As Celtic fans, we need to give him time. Do we afford him that amount of time? Because as we said, 1 year you don't win the league, second year you have to win it, because otherwise, it is a crisis almost at a football club like Celtic. But we need to have supported him long before now, because you can't ask Tony Ralston, as much as you can't ask Tony Ralston and Greg Taylor to act as inverted fullbacks, you also can't ask Gavin Strachan, where did he come from? Fucking the back end of Portsmouth in the third league of English football? Was that where he came from? Peterborough, even worse. And Mick McCann, Stephen McManus stuff. You're asking coaches who aren't even qualified to tell players who aren't qualified how to do a system that they don't understand themselves. It's just, we're just not ready for this as a club.
I know it's difficult to give a definitive answer on that, but you do talk about the structure, and rightly so. The structure is kind of piss poor. It's like the house that Jack built. But we are where we are right now. We're in October now. So if Plan A, well, the manager, if it doesn't work with him, like if we do pull the trigger, do we get the same type of candidate, or do we go back to the drawing boards?
Yeah, sorry. So Plan A, if this is Plan A, what do we do for Plan B? So I think is that your kind of question?
Yeah. I'm being a dick right now, sorry, but
No, that's fine.
Enzo Maresca, that guy that we wanted as well, he was a candidate.
Apparently he's not doing that great, yeah.
He's not doing too good right now in
That's
Italian football.
That's football.
And it's a risk, yeah.
Plan B for us should be what Plan A should have been all along. Give the guy the fucking support. If this isn't working, first and foremost, if it's not working, we need to help the guy. We shouldn't get rid of him straight away. We should help the guy. But if we're fundamentally, as a football club, unable to do that, which for 18, 19 years, we've proven that we don't help the guy at the top of the table, I can't see us helping him now at this stage. It almost looks inevitable that if the results continue as they are, where we get a sporadic one every 2 or 3 games and too many losses or draws in between, eventually Ange will be shown the door. I don't want him to be shown the door. I want him to stay. I love the guy as a personality. I think he's great. I love his enthusiasm for the game and his structure and ideas and his philosophies and everything. I love everything that he's trying to bring. But plan B should be to realise that we fucked up. So give him the support. Because to bring in somebody else of the same ilk, another experiment, something a bit different, something a bit radical, we're going to come into the same trap. The bottom line is, as you said earlier on, Gavin, with a guy like Mick McCarthy who could bring in, 6-foot British players who know the game and brute force the rest of it. It's a one season hit. You become what you don't want to be as football is concerned. It's not a nice style, but you might get the result you want short term, but it's not progressive enough to be long term successful.
I agree.
We need to be, as a football club, we need to back this guy and actually do some serious modern fucking thinking.
Good points. Paddy, plan B, Gordon Strachan. What's your thoughts, mate?
No, I'm leaving entertaining a plan B or any Strachan, fucking Gordon or Gavin, anybody, fucking Craig, his boy who's a scout, I think as well. I think I'm not advocating Ange to be sacked any time soon or anything like that, but Ange needs to realise that where he's been before, he's obviously developed these philosophies and ideals, which is great. It's fine. He's got to the position that he is, and now he's a Celtic manager. Got a big job. But he needs to realise that he's not going to be afforded these luxuries and graces of having 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, 18 months to develop a team. He's got a team on the pitch, right? He's been given players, he's got players bought. Albeit it's not the greatest fucking collective of guys that he's got, but he's got players at his disposal. If he's going to bring in fucking a £10 million right back or a £10 million left back and still have them playing in the number 10 position when the other team is fucking coming towards my goal, that doesn't matter because he's still made an arse of it, as far as I'm concerned. He needs to realise that you can play as much expansive football as you want, but if you're an absolute calamity at the back, you're going to need to score about 10 goals to be in a position of comfort. Maybe not every game, obviously. You're not going to come up against teams that's fucking attacking you all the time, but it's been a very, very bad trend that teams are hitting us on the break. And as I said before, it's teams at both ends of the spectrum. It's good teams and it's bad teams, i.e. Leverkusen and Livingston. Do you know what I mean? There needs to be some kind of equilibrium there where if he's going to have guys like Montgomery and Ralston, for example, your two fullbacks bombing forward, then somebody needs to drop back and help the defenders out, which they're not doing. The midfield only offer any kind of defensive shield for your two centre-backs. The likes of Abada and Jota, as good as they may be attacking-wise, they're offering zero defence for the likes of Ralston and the right-back. Do you know what I mean? There's so many times, and I've kind of overlooked it a wee bit because I've been a wee bit annoyed with Ralston's performances, but I can see his passion, I can see what he's offering to the team, but there's times that he's defending 2 and 3 guys because your wingers aren't offering any help. So that needs to be sorted out as well. Do you know what I mean? It's not just individual performances. As much as there has been individual shocking performances, it's a collective at the back. Mm-hmm. It needs to be structured in a way that somebody's going to have to be in there shielding and helping out.
Aye, it's a predicament, mate. And see, whenever you say if they're going to bomb forward or go into the number 10 position, whether it's Monty or Ralston, and get someone to drop back, like a defensive midfielder to drop back and to cover for them, for me, it then kind of kills the idea of an overload in midfield. You know, it takes away, you're bringing in one player, but you're taking away another. You're taking away a midfielder to add in a fullback. For me, it doesn't really quite make sense, apart from the momentum that you're carrying as a forward running player. It's a difficult one. It's strange to us. I don't think we've really seen it that much unless we paid a lot of attention to like the Bayern Munich teams with like Philip Lahm under Guardiola. I know that Guardiola loves that, but uh, it's a difficult one.
Gav, they were teams that were defending in threes. See, even if you had your Philip Lam or I don't know, Alaba on your wings,
Yeah.
they were running up, they were cutting inside, they were doing whatever. You still had another player from midfield dropping back to help shield the back two. You wouldn't leave two defenders at the back up against three men. That's
Do you
just.
think if we had Scott Brown in the quarterback role, would that?
Arguably, yes, and as much as I've been a guy who says that I'm going to have to choose my words very wisely here. As much as I've been a guy who says, thank you, Scott, your time has come to move on, yeah, we kind of are missing the fact that he did sit so freaking deep, that he did provide that third centre-back support almost, so that, you know what, it's almost like, and I mean no disrespect at all, but it's almost like Ange has not figured out that there's a formation called 3-5-2 yet. Because three centre-backs is exactly what he needs if you're going to have your two full-backs become inverted and become centre-mids. You need a third centre-back so that you're not getting stretched the whole way over. With two, you're fucked. But with a third one, you can sacrifice someone covering the right-back position because you still have two centre-backs, or covering a left-back, vice versa. It's almost like he's not realised that you can get three centre-backs. Or perhaps, as what I was hoping to see out of the Aberdeen game by playing near Beaton, he sacrifices one of the attacking midfielders in Roderick and Turnbull for near Beaton, who is capable of then dropping back, regardless of what you want to think about his actual ability as a centre back. He is capable and knows that role, so theoretically he should have been able to drop back and provide that support for the back two when the two full-backs are cutting in. It needs adapted. The whole thing needs slightly adapted. While it's not ready yet, it needs adapted. And
that's the point that I was trying to make. We can all see where it's going
exactly.
wrong.
We can see it. We can see it.
We can see where it's going right, and we can see majorly where it's going wrong, right? But Gav, you're saying, how do we give Postecoglou time? Do we do this? Do we do that? If he's going to persist with this system that's so flawed as it stands, for what we've seen, he's basically digging. He's digging a hole. He's digging his own grave, mate. He's digging a hole. As much as the forward line are looking extremely offensive. I mean, Jota looks like a brilliant acquisition. He's like a magician.
I think it's a race against time, mate. I think it's a race against time between how long does it take for the current set of players to actually carry it out correctly. That against the tolerance of the Celtic board and the tolerance of the Celtic fans. How much patience do they have? What's going to fall first, or what's going to succeed first? It's an interesting one.
This is the thing. See for the two clubs. See for the previous clubs that he's came from. He has come into a club and he has transformed them. He's won leagues, he's won cups, he's won whatever. But he's come into clubs that are basically in a two-horse race. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. I've said it before about Australia and Japan. It's leagues where in the last 10, 12 years, 8 different clubs have won each of those two leagues. Whereas in the last 10 years, we've won the league. That's the pressure and the expectations that he's at a club where we expect it now, and be that rightly or wrongly from us as a fan base, against clubs where he's come in and basically he's been afforded 2 seasons, 3 seasons, if it was that, but I don't think it actually took that long to become the league title, and then it's been heralded and it's been great for them, and they've talked about it for years after, sort of thing. Whereas you're at a club now where if you don't give us success, you're not good enough. You're going to be shown the door. For me, it's I think he can be afforded more time if the Celtic board would afford him the backroom changes that he needs. See if we as a fan base can see the backroom staff changing and things start to progress. We could probably say, I can see where Andrew's going. I know he needs 6 months to a year. We can see it happen. We can see the backroom changes. We can see he's getting the help that he needs. We can see where this is going. Whereas right now, all we're seeing is drop points, struggling to a last 5-minute winner against Aberdeen, and then still seeing Gavin Strachan and John Kennedy being the fucking educators of fucking football to young players like Abad and Jota, who are quality players on the day. And I know Abad is kind of hot and cold at times, but I still think Abad is a fantastic footballer.
He's got a fair few goals.
Yeah, but he needs coaching. He needs educated in football. He's not a finished article. But what the fuck is John Kennedy going to tell Leo Abada to do? Nothing. John Kennedy's telling Leo Abada nothing. I'm sorry. I'm not saying John Kennedy's a defensive coach or an attacking coach. I don't care what his speciality is. John Kennedy's not telling Leo Abada fuck all about how to play football. Leo Abada's telling him.
See on the subject of John Kennedy, right? Obviously, everybody's kind of questioning John Kennedy. Is he a defensive coach? Is he working on defensive tactics?
He's not a defensive coach. We've heard that so many times.
No, I know that, right? But he's one of the coaches at Celtic, right? And last season, the defence was a disgrace. This season, it looks to me, in my opinion, equally, if not worse. John Kennedy's been in kind of a forefront position for these last 2 seasons. I'm not suggesting it's John Kennedy's fault, but what I'm suggesting is, do we have any coaches at Celtic Park that know how to coach defenders?
Nope. We don't have coaches who know how to coach any position. We have coaches who know how to coach. I'm going to sound really fucking harsh here. We have coaches who know how to coach Sunday League football. Generic, basic shit. How to put the cones out, how to be fit. No, okay, they don't know how to be fit. We've got generic coaches.
How did Ayer earn his move to Brentford? And again, and conversely, how did Shane Duffy, who is an out-and-out British old-school defender, how did he have like the worst season in living memory, but now he's flourishing again at Brighton? Those two polar opposites, a young man progressing in his career and an experienced head regressing. How is that possible?
So Shane Duffy
Can we lay him all at the door of John Kennedy or the coaches?
No.
The coaches general. John Kennedy specifically, no. Coaches is general, yes. Shane Duffy, to use those two examples, Shane Duffy came to Celtic after we were told by all the guys who follow Irish football with the national team and EPL football and stuff that he's actually a good defender, he's actually a good player, he's big, he's a brute, he could get us a few goals. We thought we were going to see that. It never happened. So he comes to Celtic and he's a flop. Let's call it what it is. He was a flop. But he's left and he's actually holding his own again. Fair play to him. That suggests that something wasn't right for the year he's at Celtic. Christopher Ayer is at Brentford. That guy should be in AC Milan 2 years ago. He's now at Brentford. He's not developed to the position that he should have been at. Arguably, you could argue that we've not developed him into the player that he could have been.
But you remember Christopher Ayer was brought in as a midfielder under Ronnie Dyer.
That's 6 years ago.
He then went to Kilmarnock because it was agreed between the backroom staff, which was Rodgers at the time, that he would be better off as a centre back. So he went to Kilmarnock. He was there on loan for 2 seasons.
Who was the manager? Like, shoot me if I'm wrong. Was it? I thought it was Lee McCulloch at Kilmarnock at that point. Am I totally wrong?
It might have actually been. It might have been McCulloch. It's either McCulloch or Clark. One of the two.
Should we credit Lee McCulloch for this transition?
No, don't even mention his name on here again. But no, it just ties in. I mean, like, that's 2 seasons now where the defending has been hoaching, right? Last season was under Neil Lennon, which was a catastrophe. This season, again, there's a continuing trend there where we are shocking defensively. Last season was last season. Neil Lennon was last season. This season's Postecoglou. Nothing's changed defensively apart from this bizarre idea that you can have inferior fullbacks playing like your Philip Lambs, your fucking Alabas, whoever else, these kind of fancy top league kind of inverted fullbacks that you've got. We're trying to fit square pegs into round holes. And I know that you're saying like we could get players to come in and fit that system under time, but we've not got that time. We don't have the luxury of being able to play this waiting game and waiting for it all to gel in. We're losing schoolboy goals. You know what I mean? We can't be doing that at a club like Celtic. We're the biggest club in the league, and we're not playing like it. Offensively, aye. Offensively, we're very pleasing on the eye. Do you know what I mean? We're creating some fantastic goals. Kyogo's got 8 goals in 11 or 12 games. You know what I mean? He's been a revelation for him in. Obviously had a wee bit of injury. Jota's come in. He's transformed us again. As I said, he's a wee magician. He's got the blank canvas to go and do what he wants. But that's fine if you're going to focus on attacking if your defence is solid enough at the back, which it isn't. There's no point in having a speedball with a hole at the back. You know what I mean?
I can't disagree with you whenever you said we're letting in, like we're making schoolboy errors. I cannot disagree with that, and that's really difficult to admit, but it's painfully obvious. I think defensively, the biggest flaws we've got, and you might really disagree with me here, are not the centre backs right now. It is the fullbacks. I know that's been the big topic of this evening's chat, the fullbacks, but even on Super Scoreboard, I know that you don't really hold them in the highest esteem. They said that Starfelt and Vickers, as a partnership, they had their best game against Aberdeen.
You're joking. You're kidding me on it. Is that what they said?
Hold up a minute. Just one little second. The centre back pairing for Celtic versus Rafe Rovers was Carter Vickers and Starfelt, and we held a clean sheet against Aberdeen. We conceded a goal. What?
Mate, Starfelt looks to be the most uncomfortablest defender I've seen in a long time. See that
aesthetically, it looks awkward, but
sorry,
what clangers recently in the past, like maybe 3, 4, 5 games, what I could be wrong, but what clangers has he been making? For me, the focus is on the fullbacks, not on Starfelt.
I watched Starfelt the first 45 minutes at Aberdeen. The boy Ramirez up front tortured him every single time physically, and I just don't think he brings anything. I honestly don't think he brings anything to the team. No. At the start, when the guy came in, you're like, oh, brilliant, a £4.5 million Swedish international defender for Russia. Right, he must have a bit about him. I've not seen that at all. And I know I might come across as slightly harsh, but that's just my honest opinion. And I think every time that the guy's on the park, there's a bomb scare waiting to happen. But it's mostly the stuff that isn't like a big talking point, i.e. a goal or a foul or something. It's the wee things. It's like being bullied by one man up front. It's being dragged out of position. It's no being able to put a tackle in. You know what I mean? He makes a simple pass 2 or 3 yards in front of him to a guy, but there's nothing there. I mean, Vickers has got at least a bit of physicality about him. I mean, you've seen him, he's been putting in last-ditch tackles. He's been hustling and bustling. He's not been great, but he's still been a lot better than the partnership of Starfelt and Welsh. I just think that Starfelt just is not good enough. And I think I don't think he's the biggest problem, but he's definitely a problem. The biggest problem is the setup. The biggest problem is the fact that a player who, in my mind, isn't good enough is being left even more fragile because of the setup.
I feel that Starfelt, when he first came in for the first few games, he was a bomb scare. He fucked up so many times. That clears with his right foot when he's sliding in on the left side in his first game, I think it was, and he caused the goal.
Yeah.
He basically flipped the ball to the opponent and the opponent scored. He caused 2-3 goals in his first 2-3 games. I've not seen those sort of errors in the last couple of games from Starfelt, which is good, because he's probably starting to adjust himself a little bit, but he's not showing any confidence in it. And I think you're seeing that a lot with what Paddy's saying, that he's able to make a couple of decent passes 2-3 yards to the guy in front or the guy to the side if there's one there, sort of thing. But he's not doing enough to instill confidence in the rest of the team. And maybe it's a combination of, again, the fullbacks being so inverted so much into the central midfield that you see the glaring gap to his side, to his left, to his right, not to his left. That when he does get the ball at his feet, everybody's kind of like, oh fuck, what's going to happen here? And it's becoming anxious even by reputation rather than by the situation that he's in at the time. And I don't think that helps anybody. Again, it still comes back to these fullbacks. They need to be in the right positions. They need to be smarter and better. They just aren't. But Starfelt, I can understand where you're coming from with that line there, Gavin, that maybe statistically he's not been that terrible. He's actually probably had his best game against Aberdeen. I can probably understand that, although he did concede the goal. Well, he personally didn't concede the goal, but we conceded the goal while he was on the park, so yeah, it's a bit weird, but he's getting better. At the end of the day, though, Carter Vickers for me looks the better centre-back right now that we have, and when Julian's fit, I think Starfelt's on the bench.
McGinty, do you think if Paddy was an army general, he would have shot Ralston for desertion?
I think we would have shot Ralston before that, but yeah.
Cool. I wanted to move on to another thing. I know that we've been dissecting the tactics of Celtic for a while, and we could go on for ages. Another point that we never really touched on was the defensive solidity of the midfield. You know, McCarthy, Sorrow, Beaton. You know, chopping and changing. But again, we could go on for ages and ages. I want to talk about a wee interview that John Park had with one of the tabloids, and he was talking about the transfer policy, his mandate as like the kind of the lead head of scouting for Celtic, and he was saying that the likes of your 9 million on Edward, your 7 million on Julian, he felt that he never had to do that. He felt that Lawwell, he says in an interview that Lawwell would sanction the move if it felt like at the right price, right player, and the coach would appreciate him as a footballer. And he was talking about the likes of like, the Van Dijks, the Wanyamas, Moose and the Dembele, who had been targeting for a while, even before we actually pulled the trigger and bought him. He was saying that he preferred to go for that type of player where it's a lower price rather than shelling out all that money, and he even did question the value for the money. He was quoted as saying, "Did we really get value for money for Edward 9 million, and then the 40% sell-on clause? Did Celtic make much of a profit?" I think certainly your likes of Tony, sorry, Ivan Toney, who's playing for Brentford right now, that would have been a much better signing. That's my own opinion. So he actually says, "Never in my life I find it strange that people spend that amount of money on some players when you can find 100 players just as good, if not better, for a portion of that money." And have Celtic spent money well and done well? He says he doesn't really know. What do you guys think about that? Paddy, again, you were talking earlier on, so I'll just move on to Paddy for that one. Again, with the structure, McGinty was talking about having structure in place. So if we had a proper structure, do you think that we could, like Julian, 7 million, we've not seen the best of Julian, not by a long way. And Edward, we know what his legacy was. It was good and bad, and we kind of get burnt with the transfer sell-on clause. Do you think that there is a substance to that kind of quote where we shouldn't be spending that types of money?
There's a case for it and there's a case against it. If you can buy in a player like Edward for 9 million, who I think justified his fee over the course of his time here. Clearly, our main motto at the club is to kind of buy young, sell high, and get a good reward on that. But I mean, you look at some of the players that he signed. It was like guys like Ledley. We managed to find him get him on
Gary Hooper.
for nothing. Gary Hooper, you know what I mean, 2.4 million. a guy that was in kind of League One Championship down in England. Your Wanyamas, you know what I mean? That was kind of guys that went under the radar. That's the kind of guys that we need to tap into, i.e., like a Kyogo. Do you know what I mean? You're not going to get many big clubs coming in for him. I think somebody kind of European wise, it might have been an Italian team, was kind of sniffing after him. But
Was
we
it no
managed to.
Alkmaar? Mind he said.
Alkmaar, sorry,
with the
sorry.
right back at the same time.
Sorry, aye, the Japanese right back that plays against us. But I think Kyogo knocked them back. But that's the kind of guys that we need to be looking at. But there's nothing to suggest that we shouldn't be trying to sign a kind of marquee signing. Do you know what I mean? Like if you see a player like Edward, who you can tell is going to have a big future, then aye, by all means, for God's sake, go and buy him. You know what I mean? Fuck's sake, how many times have we no paid the extra 200 grand for a player?
Aye.
Like a John McGinn. Do you know what I mean?
It's just probably more indicative of quotes from a man who takes so much pride in his work that, like, from our point of view as a fan, we are happy if we've got the money to shell out in that. But I think it's more indicative of a man who takes so much pride in his work that he would rather not spend that money because he believes so much in his own ability to identify the kind of the diamond in the rough.
Possibly. But I mean, if you were to look at John Park's kind of signings that he oversaw personally, or was a major part of as a coach, the scouting system, you're probably going to find that he signed a lot of duds as well. You know what I mean? I'm trying to think of kind of the players that we had good performances, good success on the pitch, as well as got a good sell-on fee. You're maybe talking like say your Van Dijks, excuse me, which I'm sure Park had extensively scouted. Fraser Forster, he was another one that sold for over 12 million, but I'm sure that was Alan Thompson that was basically behind that because he had worked with him at Newcastle at youth level.
Geordie connection.
Do you know what I mean? So there's got to be a collective here.
Aye, and his last signing was Ryan Christie.
Right, okay, so that's obviously, for most part, was decent. A lot of people wasn't too enamoured with him in recent years, but he did well enough for probably the price that we paid. But you can't just say, oh, we need to go and sign players like, for talk's sake, under £1 million,
Yeah,
under £2 million.
biscuit tin mentality.
Aye, but the difference is when you're going out and spending like £3.5 million on Klamala, Neil Lennon no playing him, which Klamala's come out in the press recently and stated. You're then going and signing guys at £2 million, like your what do you call him? Oh, the boy for Ivory Coast that got Bio. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's like £5 million you spent on two duds. Do you know what I mean? When you could have out and spent £5 million on Tony, for example.
Kyogo.
Do you know what I mean?
Aye.
There's no one scout out there that's performed absolute miracles and no brought in duds. Do you know what I mean? So, it's nice in essence that the guy's saying like we can go out and we can find these unearthed gems, but there's got to be a balance.
So a few years ago, I don't know how much you guys might have been aware or remember this, but a few years ago, ex-Dundee United manager Peter Houston actually came to Celtic as a scout. I think John Park was still with us or just in transition period, whatever it was. And there's an interview kicking about many moons ago by Peter Houston who came out and says, look, I'm in awe of the scouting network that Celtic have, the database and depth of knowledge of players that Celtic have at that time was second to none that he's ever seen before. This was on the back of basically John Park doing his £2 to £4 million kind of buying range of your Van Dijks, your Hoopers, your Ledleys, all the good players, Ian Kyle and stuff who went on for decent money. Ki Sung Young went on for good money as well in comparison to what we brought him in for. When we had John Park, this is his legacy that Peter Houston's talking about. We had tens of scouts officially signed to Celtic and unofficially helping us build this database. You look at Ange Postecoglou just now. I think he uses a database called Y Scout or WY Scout. not familiar with it myself. Obviously, not being a pro scout, I don't have access to that as such. But it almost feels like 10 years ago we had that database ourselves, like built up by ourselves, and this is what John Park's able to tap into back in the day, to find your £2 to £3 to £4 million players who would come in and perform like a £10 million player for Celtic, wins the league, gets into the last 16 of the Champions League, all the stuff that we need to be happening. Things change from then to now. A couple of things have changed. One is that scouting network is just non-existent anymore. It's really threadbare and basic as hell, from what I understand. And secondly, we need to, just even purely by inflation, we need to adapt that range. So for me, buying a £2 to £4 million player is great if you can turn it into a 10, 12, 15 million pound player. But in essence, we still need to be able to now go out inflation wise and just generically and generally by adapting our own system, be able to afford to sign a 5, 6, 7 million pound player, i.e. Kyogo, Julian, or the luxury of the Edouard, and hope to then get £20 million back for them. Now, Edouard is maybe a bit of a kick in the teeth, the fact that the rumoured 40 million, the fact that he's on his last year of the contract and we didn't get as much as we hoped, but I think we all generally expected 25-30 million for him a year or two ago. And I don't think that was unrealistic, to be honest. I think that was quite realistic. But circumstances have changed since then. We're still needed to try and chase that. We need to get back to that. We need to get back to a great scout system that can find those. Yeah, it might not be 2, 3, 4 million. It might now be 4, 5, 6, i.e. Kyogo. But we need to find that player, find that range again that we can then sell for 15 to 20 million later on. Edouard excused because circumstances with Edouard was different with the 10 the last season. Arguably the 40% is in there. I would like to see that somewhat next year's results if that's the case, but we'll figure that out later. But that in itself, that 40%, is not a down point on the structure that we have, where if we can afford to spend £7 million on Julian or £9 million on Edouard, we should. However, just one more point, I don't feel like we did that 10 years ago. I think we kept saying that, the money's there if we need to spend it. But 10 years ago, I don't think we ever did. But we have in the last 3 or 4 years with those two players, namely.
Yeah, the 9 million was definitely a kind of a change in the direction in our transfer policy, and it's good to be dynamic. Obviously exploiting the English market for the young players who came through the development programs at the English games, at the English clubs. Like we did with Dembele, and then obviously the other scale going for an Edouard at 9 million. It's good to be dynamic and not to be shoehorned into one particular philosophy. Another thing that I'm really excited at is the fact that, and we don't need an army of scouts for this, we've got Postecoglou himself, is that by January, whenever our transfer window opens up, the Japanese league, the J League, should be at that point wrapped up.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to what potentially might come out of that. And as an example.
And I wish that we actually had like a broadcasting coverage of the J League to actually get an inkling of what the potential could be.
I think Premier Sports has it. I believe.
I probably still wouldn't watch. I'm a total hypocrite.
Fair enough.
Well, seeing you're talking about the J League, I know that there's been one player mentioned in the media. His name escapes me. It's on the tip of my tongue, but he's a forward player.
Was he bald? Was he bald by any chance?
It's like
Dazim
Badu or something along those lines. If that's not his name, I do apologise. But it's some forward player that's been noted that Ange worked with him in Japan, and it's somebody that he admires. Now, if that's the type of player that he wants to come in, if he wants to go for it and buy, that's great. But do you know what I mean? How are we going to elevate this team in January? I think it's going to be elevated slightly when you're getting guys like Julian back, definitely 100% in the defence, and guys like Forrest coming back as well. Do you know what I mean? It's going to be a big lift.
think Giakoumakis could make a big impact in the second half of the season.
Giakoumakis, well, there's another guy that we've not even spoke about. You know what I mean? There's a guy who's been brought in for Holland, unfit, apparently. Excuse me. Top goal scorer on the Eredivisie last season. What happened the last previous couple of games? He's not been brought on. They brought a Jetty on. You know what I mean? A guy that was signed for £5 million. A guy that isn't good enough.
Did you hear that he get called out by Ramon Vega?
Who did?
Ajeti.
Well,
And
for like a fight.
no, like Ramon Vega, because he get called up to the Swiss international team, and Ramon Vega I think he was kind of questioning why. He was saying that he's not been doing it for Celtic and he just doesn't look fit or hungry or blah blah blah. And Ajeti responded back again through the media to say, "Who is this guy? I've never even heard of him." It was just a wee spat that I heard about, that I read about.
I think Vega's got a very good point, to be perfectly honest. He's not done anything. It's pre-season. I mean, we spoke about him. He looked sharp enough. Then he went off the boil again. Then he came in. He had 1 or 2 games where he looked pretty decent. He looked as if he was giving some good effort. He scored a couple of goals, but the last few games that he's made appearances or fleeting appearances, he's certainly not been good enough. But hasn't he looked sharp? He hasn't looked interested, in my opinion. And that's a guy that Postecoglou is bringing on instead of this £4 million Greek striker, Giakoumakis. You know what I mean?
Aye, I think we've got flaws in every area of the pitch. Maybe not goalkeeper, but defence. There's improvements to be made there. Midfield, definitely improvements to be made there. And the only thing that I would kind of say about up front, I'd like to see a wee bit more involvement from Abada, but for a 19-year-old, I think he just turned 20 actually in the Aberdeen game. I think for a 20-year-old, he's exceeded expectations. So at the same time, I can't be harsh on the boy. He's came over to a brand new country, learning the language, and he's, apart from his girlfriend, I think, who's with him, he's only got beat on, as a fellow countryman. I want to see more. I would love to see Kyogo play with like a Giakoumakis. I want to see that happen, but it might not. It might not, and especially if we persevere with the 4-3-3, I think Kyogo is wasted on the left wing. I think he's better through the middle, but I would love to see him again with a strike partner. Guys, been through a shit ton of stuff. Fixtures wise, after the international break, I think Scotland have got 2 games. Who is it? We've got Israel on Saturday, and then is it like some crap team afterwards? Who knows? But
Crap for Scotland. Hold up, I'll just Google this while we're live. We're playing Israel on Saturday, then we're playing the Faroe Islands on Tuesday.
Aye, so back to Celtic after that. So it'll be Motherwell versus Celtic on Saturday, the 16th of October at 3 o'clock. And then the midweek game is Celtic at home to Ferencvaros, Tuesday, the 19th of October at, get this one, 3:30 in the afternoon.
What?
Mind that one, 3:30 in the afternoon. Mind.
Right, yeah, I saw it as, yep.
So whether you're an armchair fan or a season ticket holder, it could be a bit of a logistical problem to actually watch that one. But I think the last international break for Celtic was terrible. We returned with so many injuries. Hopefully, after this international break, we come back. Postecoglou's got a wee bit more time to bed in players, his philosophy. Who knows? And God willing, the players come back without any injuries. I think Postecoglou said in a post-match interview against Aberdeen, he said if any of the players come back with an injury, he's told them not to bother coming back at all. So
I think he said it jokingly, but yeah.
I know, of course, he did, of course. Paddy taking it.
That's a bit harsh.
Can I just acknowledge, and I don't want to put any more undue pressure onto Postecoglou or the players. Not that they listen to this, mind you, although if you are, hi Ange. The next 8 games involves Motherwell, Ferencvaros twice, St Johnstone in the league and in the cup semi-final, Dundee and Livingston. There's a bit of revenge going on there. See the next 8 games, we can actually garner 6 points in the Europa, get to a final of a cup, and go on some sort of a 5-6 game run in the league. All 8 games are winnable. And see if we do win these 8 games, or take the vast majority of wins, 90-95% of wins at this, I think we could be onto a good point here. There's a very good run of games here where we can build confidence, get into a final, get some Europa League wins, and build some points. If we can get going here, I think we might be good going into the rest of the season, especially the second half.
Do you think that could potentially put the smile back in Paddy's face?
I don't know if much can put any smile on Paddy's face these days, but surely eight wins on the trot, or even 9 if you count the Aberdeen one there. 9 wins on the trot would put a smile on everybody's face, surely.
Listen, see us getting that win at Postecoglou. That put a smile on my face, right? But it was more of a smile of relief than anything.
It was laboured.
Extremely laboured. I hope that is going to be used as some sort of springboard now for us to then go and progress on for the rest of the season. This month, every single game that we come up against in the next month is totally winnable. We shouldn't be getting into that with any fear whatsoever. We should be obliterating these teams. My biggest concern is that it's going to be mere periods of fucking heart attack material stuff. Do you know what I mean? Especially with this defence. The defence and the setup is just, it's suicidal for me. And that's my biggest fucking disenchantment now with the team that's on the park and the management. Do you know what I mean? They've come in. Andrew's come in. He's gave us his wisdom. Everybody's been taking him. I think, well, a majority, if not everybody. Do you know what I mean? It all sounds absolutely fantastic on paper. You have seen glimpses of it. It's just that recently it's been torrid, and it's been mostly due to the amount of goals that we've shipped and conceded, the amount of points that we've dropped, games that's lost, the manner in which we've lost these games and dropped points. Do you know what I mean? So if Ange can use that massive win at Postecoglou, you know, the first away game that we've won since fucking February, to elevate this team and sort of reinforce the squad again, as well as having some guys coming back from injury, i.e. Julian, Forrest, Giacomakis, hopefully coming up to speed and getting involved in the team. Do you know what I mean? Things could quickly change as quick as they've came negative for this particular team. You know what I mean? We're sitting 6th in the league now, right? That's a terrible position to be in for Celtic, but it's only two handfuls of games in. There's only 5-6 points between us and top spot. You know
and
what I mean?
the clocks have they went back yet? You know, it's still early doors.
Exactly. There's still plenty of time for this to change. We are seeing the positive signs, but we're just seeing too many negative signs as it stands now. So hopefully there can be a wee bit of wind of change, and hopefully that game against Aberdeen is the springboard. I'm hoping, praying.
Well said, here, mate. To the viewers, we're actually available now on Spotify. We're going up in the world. Check us out there if you can't get us on YouTube. And again, if you're on YouTube and watching us, please hit the subscribe button, please hit the like button, and by all means, leave a comment. Tell me how cringeworthy my joke was about the Army General. And any points about Celtic, where we've gone wrong, the potential that we've got for this season. Jink will win the league. Jink Postecoglou will still be the manager by the end of the season. Anything, leave us your thoughts. I think we can wrap it up there. We know where we're going. Good luck to Scotland against Israel. I think it's a big one. Totally in touch with that. But any last thoughts from you guys before we wrap up for tonight?
Just trying to be a bit more positive. As I said, with the 8 games coming up, they're all winnable. However, obviously, a couple of slip-ups can be excused, but there's positivity looking forward. We got that one against Aberdeen. We're looking forward to the next few games, the next 8 games. I think they're all winnable. We can put a run of form in, and I think we should hopefully start seeing, with the new guys coming back in, Giacomakis coming into the fold, Kyogo, Forrest, Julian, as Paddy just said, I think hopefully we can start building on it. We've all seen the frailties. We all know our weaknesses. We want to give Ange time. But let's see where we are in 8 games time.
Keep the faith. Keep the faith. Well said. Right. Well, thanks again. So from myself, from McGinty, and from Paddy, the Jungle Gyms, thank you very much.
Here,
Good night.